Okay, so much to cover in this one. Well, alrighty then. So now we've been exploring color, and we started off with this idea of warm and cool primary colors, and with those we were able to make our secondary colors. And from there we were even able to explore and do complementary colors that helped us to expand our idea of tertiaries and into dirtier colors. Let's say, so more like a khaki green or a burnt orange, that kind of thing, right? We learned how to make browns and darks, right? Okay, well, cool. Let's practice with that a little bit. And in practicing with that, we're going to learn a lot because so far we've been using these tempera paints much in the way that we used the watercolor paints. In other words, the watercolor paints were used as transparent paints, right? And when we use the tempera paints, so far we also use those as transparent paints. Let me show you the difference, because now we're going to use them as an opaque paint. Here we have an example using the tempera paints as a transparent paint. And you can see where I've got the blue and I've got the yellow, and I put the yellow over the blue, and well, we get green, right? That makes sense. But if I use them in an opaque manner, we've got the white and the blue and the yellow, and the blue and the yellow, you still got yellow, right, over top of it. Now, this leads us to something really important. As I've been showing you these guys right here, I've still been trying to show you that we would start in the back and work our way forward, right? We'd do the background and then we'd come forward with the foreground. But with them being transparent, we also had to sort of paint around things a little bit and be very concerned about what colors we placed first, right? And then we just build them up. They were as light as they would ever be, and we got darker and darker and darker. That's not necessarily the case when we're working with the opaque paints. Okay, so now here's our first lesson. I've often talked about the magic white line, right? And that's what kids get when they paint around something. Okay, well, we can see it illustrated here very clearly, right? The other problem with this is that oftentimes they don't think about where the brush strokes are going, and they just make the brush strokes go whatever direction around something. What we want to do instead is we want to paint the whole area. We want to paint through something and then put something on top of it. And that way we don't have the magic white line. So for this exercise, here's another thing that we're going to change. We have been using paper, right? And as you saw with this, the paper, it absorbs and it buckles, and we have to tape it down very firmly and everything, right? The canvas is not going to work in that same way, right? It's not going to absorb your paint in that same manner. Cool. You'll see what I mean in just a little bit when I get into the painting. But for this exercise, instead of just doing whatever, the way that we've done with the other ones, I actually have something I want you to do. And I call it 4 Turtles in the Fall. Now, you could make a rather realistic and complex painting of turtles. That would be okay. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll paint them all with fall foliage, and there you go, 4 turtles in the fall, right? But you don't have to. In fact, we could take an extraordinarily simplistic drawing like this and actually do this exercise really well, because this exercise is not really about the drawing, it's about the painting, right? And so here we go, 4 turtles in the fall. What we're really looking towards doing is learning some techniques and working once again with all our different primaries, secondaries, tertiaries, our browns and our darks, all that we could make with the warm and cool colors. So sort of one of the keys to making this happen is we're going to introduce white. You get to use white now in addition to everything else. And I said these are going to be opaque. They're not going to be as opaque as, let's say, an oil paint, right? They're going to be a little bit more finicky than that. But that's okay. We're going to learn a few things. And like I say, let's see what happens. Now let's put it into practice. And you can see I've just started with the white. Just putting white everywhere, everywhere. And the nice thing about this canvas is that it won't dry out your paint near so much like the paper did. So you'll have a little bit more working time and things are going to be a lot smoother. Now, one thing I will tell you is that you're going to have to start off with a bit more white. So as I'm preparing my colors here, you can see that I've got 1, 2, 3 things of white here because I know I'm going to use it, you know. Before, I've always harped on you guys by, oh, only put out a little bit, little bit, little bit. Well, that's really important. And we want to put out just a little bit because we don't want to waste. And we don't want to waste because when we do need to use this stuff, we want to have plenty of it. We want to be able to be very generous with ourselves. So anyways, here we go. A little bit of white everywhere, everywhere. Here, and you can also see how with this bristle brush, I was able to just scrub, 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 scrub. If you did that with one of those soft brushes, it'd be ruined. It'd be ruined right away. So now let's go ahead and I'm just going to make a blue sky. So if I want it to be a little bit lighter, I could start with the paint already on my brush. In other words, the white's already there. That's going to temper the blue. If I wanted it to be darker, I might go ahead and switch to a clean brush or wash the brush off. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and I'm going to start with this brush here. It already has the white on it because I'm kind of lazy. I don't want to wash it, right? Start up at the top, and as I work my way down, you'll see that it gets lighter and lighter. If I dip again, I think I'll start once again at the top just to bring that down because I don't want it to be dark down here. If you remember our old lessons on atmospheric perspective, you'll know that the sky is darker towards the top and it gets lighter as it comes down. In fact, at the bottom here, maybe I'll go back with a little bit of white and catch this bottom part. I want the paint to be nice and creamy. Okay, so from here, it's really easy to just go ahead and blend. Remember, brush strokes matter, especially now that we're working in opaque paints. So we just want to blend and blend. There we go. So that really what we're doing is getting rid of our brush strokes altogether. You know, I've said so many times, if you're going to paint the sky, be the sky. If you're going to paint a great blade of grass, be that blade of grass. And so if with the sky, it's going to be very smooth. So I want it to be very smooth, no brush strokes. Let's say later on when I'm doing the leaves, I want a lot of little brush strokes. You see, that's the difference. Okay, so the bottom here, I'm just going to start off with a tan color. So, got the blue on my brush already. I can go ahead and just maybe, we'll start here at the bottom and work our way up. More white. So you can see with this order of operation, we paint all that back, and that way we don't have to go around things. And we don't get the magic white line. And everything will look very natural. Because remember, the sky does not care what is in front of it. It is always the same. The ground does not care what about what's in front of it. It's always the same. So there we go. And now to this, I could go ahead and add my yellow a little bit. So now to this sort of light green I've got going on here, it'd be easy to make it tan just by adding just a tiny smidge of that magenta. Remember, starting off very small because I can always add more. Okay, so now as you can see, I've got a nice tan gray color. Now, you can see the power of how these paints have really become opaque because you can't even see my original drawing in here anymore. A little bit at the trees, but the turtles are definitely gone. So it's a good thing that I have my original drawing to fall back on now. So, one thing I could do is take the end of my brush and just give myself a little bit of a guideline. As you can see, just scratching through the paint right there. Now, if I didn't like what was happening, it'd be very easy to erase. Okay, so I have my little turtles re-outlined again just by taking the back of my brush and scoring through the paint while it's still wet. And, I actually had to, a couple times, go ahead and wipe that out and erase and start over. That's okay. This was a very easy area to do that. Now, to make the green on the turtles a little bit more vivid, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of white and just outline those turtles. Now, the thing about it is that I'm not going to scrub into the paint really harsh. Just letting that paint float on the top of the other paint. That's a big trick or secret to opaque paint and wet into wet painting, is not to push down too hard. And I don't need to make this totally white. I just want to differentiate it from the background.